hello everyone on Instagram and Facebook. It's great having you all here. So we're still on the tour, TBCA VAIDS tour, speaking about VAIDS to small businesses and SMEs around different co-working spaces. And with me today, we are having a live stream interview with the super tax subject master expert, Folajimi Olamide Akinla from PwC. So firstly, nice meeting you. Before we go ahead, he's a manager in the Tax and Regulatory Services Unit. He's an SME in International Tax and Transfer Pricing. And he's also a member of the Ministerial Committee on the whole VAIDS that we are all trying to get done. So welcome, Folajimi.
Yeah, thanks, Jay.
So can you tell us a bit about VAIDS and why now?
So VAIDS is an acronym for Voluntary Asset Incorporation Scheme. And it's a tax amnesty program organized by the Federal Ministry of Finance, as well as FRS and 6 states. Yeah. Now, the whole essence of VAIDS is for individuals who have defaulted in their taxes for the past 6 years to come forward, disclose, and make payments. Okay. Now, there are certain incentives for doing that. The so-called defaulting taxpayers get waivers for interest and penalties from tax prosecutions and comprehensive audits. The taxes covered are generally all federal taxes. So that's
education tax covered.
Exactly. Companies income tax, personal income taxes, value-added tax, stamp duties.
Okay.
So it's the whole
gamut there. Okay, so now we are in the startup space, well currently in lead space. As a startup and SME, what do I need to know about VAIDS? That's one. And what happens if I don't comply before the deadline?
Well, pretty much everything I've said.
Okay.
So VAIDS applies to all taxpayers.
Okay.
So to the extent that an SME is a taxpaying one, you'll be subject to, you are allowed to participate under VAIDS.
Okay.
And failure to do so would be a reversal of the benefits you get. So that means you will be forced to pay the taxes with interest and penalties. You'll be exposed to comprehensive audits and tax prosecution.
Okay, so if I get it correctly, you're saying if I actually if I do VAIDS now, if I now default later, what happens?
To the extent that you have complied for the 6 years,
okay,
which VAIDS seeks to cover 6 years backwards, so now 6 years backwards. To the extent that default is not within those years, then those years are fine.
Okay.
But if you default outside those 6 years, it's still a default anyway under the law.
Yeah.
So you will face the tune under the law.
Okay. Then going globally now, a World Bank tax index put Nigeria in the bottom 10. I did the research and found out that there are about 59 taxes or so that Nigerian companies, probably the bigger companies, need to get to be compliant. What could be done about this? Because 59 is a whole lot, seriously.
So you mentioned two things. You mentioned one, Nigeria is bottom 10.
Yeah.
And you said there are multiple taxes.
Yeah.
So I think I need to correct that.
Okay.
So Nigeria is actually not bottom 10.
Okay.
In the most recent report, 2018, Nigeria moved 11 steps from 181 to 171 or thereabouts. So we're actually bottom 19. Yeah, but the good news is that we moved 11 steps.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll keep progressing. Yeah. So your second question was multiple taxation. Yeah, and it's a real concern for businesses and incentive companies in Nigeria. The good thing about it is the government is aware. So in the course of my work, I've had calls to engage governments at the state level and federal level. And there are a lot of problems, and I know there's some form of a plan to harmonize taxes. Okay. So instead of having something plus taxes, you have a couple of taxes.
Okay. And also, March 31st deadline, do you believe, this is now personally, do you think there should be an extension? I know from the history of directors, there was a saying there where they're looking at how can we extend this. Do you think that, because we've given us 7 months already?
9 months.
Oh, 9 months. They've given us 9 months already.
The call for extension is for the government to make.
Okay.
Before they make that, they have to consider certain factors. First of which is, was there sufficient information out there for taxpayers and sufficient avenue for them to come forward and disclose and pay these taxes in the 9-month period? If government can beat its chest and say, okay, I made everything available, I will not extend. On the flip side, if certain things were not set in place for people to comply, then maybe in the spirit of amnesty, the government could consider an extension. I know the Minister of Finance has come out, even Tuesday, a couple of days ago, she came out saying there will be no extension. But if you look at it holistically and try to be objective, were all the materials in place for people to, were there VAIDS desk in all the offices across the Federation, where people really are aware? If you can answer that and say yes, confidently, then maybe no extension. But if you cannot, then an extension will be in place.
So, in fact, the whole reason why this came about is because we saw a gap in SMEs and startups not understanding rates as much as possible. So, though we're trying to complement the efforts of the Ministry of Finance and the FIRS.
Commendable of you.
Exactly.
And as I said earlier, interesting is, it turns out that some high network individuals we have spoken to did not find out early enough. So an extension might not be a bad idea in the spirit of tax amnesty.
Then I recently heard about the unexplained wealth order. So just shed some light on that and how that applies to us.
So the unexplained wealth order is a UK initiative. So UK recently amended one of its laws, Proceeds of Crime Act of 2002 or 2012 was recently amended. And the order, so how it works is this: if an individual owns property in excess of £50,000 and there's a suspicion that the proceeds were not gotten out of legal means, the individual is served an order to come and explain in court how it came about the funds to acquire the property. So my take is this: if a Nigerian, for example, owns a property in excess of that threshold, who can explain how he got the money or she got the money, then there's no cause for alarm. It is when individuals cannot justify wealth, then they face risk of forfeiture of the assets and prosecution. Now, how does it relate to VAIDS? Well, individuals can still declare in Nigeria for Nigerian purposes, but it's gone beyond declaring now. They still have to justify how they got the income and the assets for the purposes of the explained wealth.
So is it? I'm wondering how Her Majesty's government will do this. Is it any property above 50,000 owned by a Nigerian?
So it's not by Nigerian. So it's specifically targeted at politically exposed persons outside the economic area. That's EEA. Yes, and persons who are suspected of having committed a crime. Yes, so those are the criteria of persons who will be examined for purposes of unexplained wealth.
Okay, that's very interesting. I'm wondering. I heard that when that came into pass, that the VAIDSTOUR lines.
So people just connected it. I mean, VAIDS and explain and it's fine. People thought that it was some sort of Nigerian regulation, but it's not. But it has an impact in that people who disclose for the purpose of Nigeria, fine, they've checked that box, but they still need to explain for other countries how they came about.
Alright, interesting. I read also, quickly said that as of February, the FIRS has raised 20 billion out of the target of 305 million from VAIDS. That, according to every standard, is poor. It's extremely poor. Now, has VAIDS been practiced elsewhere, and what is success? What successes has that done about?
So the tax amnesty program, tax amnesty generally has been adopted in different countries. Now, the most recent which I know of is Indonesia, which was an extreme success. So I know the government expanded its tax base to almost 1 million new taxpayers, bringing them into the net, and raised about 300 billion US dollars. So it was a huge success for Indonesia. With respect to other countries like Pakistan, it was a colossal failure, we hear. Now, for Nigeria, what would be the measure of success? To measure that accurately, we look at the reasons for VAIDS. One is to increase government revenue. Two is to expand the tax net and to generate a tax-paying culture. So we might not hit the revenue by 31st March. That's the 1 billion USD. We're not hitting the 31st March. But enforcement going on as a result of information gathered at VAIDS, who knows? We might get there. Now, if you look at tax-paying culture, has it increased before VAIDS? If you compare how it was before VAIDS and now, has there been an increment in people's awareness of taxes? I'll say yes. So we can attribute the measure of success to that indices. And of course, if we get many taxpayers within government bracket, within government records, then we can say there's been some measure of success. And again, let's not forget, it's Nigeria's first full tax amnesty. Other countries have done 4, 5, 6, and it's our first. So I mean, we just need to take the lessons learned for subsequent amnesty programs.
Okay. Then still on a colleague of mine or a friend that I was speaking to about VAIDS, he was talking, and I want to get your opinion on this. So he says before he doesn't believe in VAIDS, he doesn't believe the Nigerian government will do anything positive with it. He says before he can do anything like that, he wants to see that at least 70% of the political elites that they are paying their own VAIDS, and he wants them to publicly declare their tax clearance certificates. What would you say to that kind of person? Because that thinking is also prevalent. So many people have the government, there's a trust deficit, and that thinking is prevalent. What would you say to that kind of person?
I would say I understand where they're coming from, and rightfully so, they have a right to make that demand. If you look at the way governments are structured, we say people put government in power. Okay. So the government should be accountable to the people. So I don't think there's anything wrong for an individual who himself is paying taxes to come forward to challenge the government and say, okay, I pay my taxes, what about you? I put you in office. There's nothing wrong in that place. It's unfortunate, it's a real problem, there's deficit. We'd expect government officials who have income not previously declared to come forward and declare. We'd expect a transparent system where people who should get tax refunds are given tax refunds. We expect a system where tax prosecution for tax offenders are done in a just and equitable fashion. But we don't see that all the time, and it's a cause for concern. The flip side, in relation to VAIDS, is this: if people come forward collectively, right, to pay, they have the moral rights collectively to challenge the government and say, okay, I've done my part, I expect this from you, you need to do it.
Yeah, so that's after.
But there's also another school of thought that says government should lead first.
Lead the way.
Which really is not out of hand. Government actually should set the tone and set the example for such initiatives and to build trust in people.
Okay, so now you've given us two sides of the one. Which one should this my friend in quotes take? Because I think that distrust is so deep that he's probably going to default and he will keep defaulting and he doesn't care.
So the truth is that it's like a chicken and egg situation. And two wrongs don't make a right. So if government is defaulting, let me do my own part and then challenge the government. Okay. He would have a moral right to challenge government if he's done what he should do by law. But if he says government is abusing, is misappropriating funds, I won't pay taxes, then they're the same taxes.
Exactly. Yeah. So, Mr. Friend, wherever you are, if you are listening, that's for you. So now, coming back to VAIDS SME startup, how do I, when I'm calculating my taxes, how do I pay? What do I do?
Okay, so the thing about VAIDS is, I didn't mention this earlier, was a taxpayer has the right to negotiate a payment plan. Okay. Or you have the opportunity to negotiate the payment plan.
So it's still up to the FIRS?
Yes, so they have that discretion. Okay. So the maximum period is a 3-year payment plan. So you can negotiate, discuss how you spread payments over 3 years. And designated bank accounts recommended by the government. Okay. Or electronic payment platforms. Okay. Recommended by the government.
All right, then we can see some forms. What are those also? VAIDS forms.
Yeah, they are VAIDS forms prepared specifically for disclosures and declarations under the scheme. Okay. So under the normal tax regime, there are specific forms, but VAIDS has its own special forms here to take care of disclosures made under the scheme.
Okay, and there are some for individuals, some for corporates also. Okay, and for someone who lives outside Nigeria, what's his connection to VAIDS?
If you live outside Nigeria, it means you're not subject to tax in Nigeria. Okay. Yeah, so you probably would not be so concerned about it. However, if you earn an income in Nigeria, you should disclose that.
Okay. Yes. So any sort of income coming from Nigeria.
Yes, you should disclose it.
Okay. And if I'm a foreigner now, or not me, but as a case study, a foreigner who is earning from Nigeria but living outside. Is it also under this bracket?
Yeah, in the same way, yes, because I mean, if you look at the way taxes, international tax is, a foreigner would not necessarily be taxable in Nigeria. But if he earns passive income, that's income like dividends, interest, rents, and royalties, then he must account for that. There usually be a withholding tax imposed on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
So a lot of people know about that. Because not even VAIDS now, like just general taxation.
I won't be surprised if a lot of people don't know these things. Yes, I won't be surprised. And I think a lot of it is as a result of government not doing enough sensitization and people themselves not being interested enough in their own tax affairs.
Okay. Now, this brings me to the rate of the moment, or the former rate of the moment, Bitcoins, Litecoins, cryptocurrencies, and all of that. If I earn income from that angle, how, firstly, am I meant to pay Nigerian taxes? And secondly, VAIDS, how does that also apply to?
So the thing about cryptocurrencies is this: there are a couple of issues. First being that the government has not come forward, the federal government, to give any form of guidance on how such will be treated, right? I know the CBN governor has spoken in time past saying individuals should trade at their own risk and forbid banks from trading in cryptocurrencies. Other countries have come out to say this is what will classify cryptocurrencies are, and this will be the tax implications. In Nigeria, there's that lag, so we don't know exactly how it will. I know in a country like the US, they treat it as property. So any income you earn, you pay taxes as though it was your income. If you mine it, it's self-employment income. So you must disclose it. And if you make a loss, it could be that if you trade and you make a loss, the loss will be looked at as if it was either a capital loss or trading loss.
Okay.
So yeah, different countries have set the rules. So there are no really gray areas in those countries. But I guess we'll have to wait for FRS to sort of set the rules straight for how cryptocurrencies is treated.
And because now you say capital gain, so if you gain anything from cryptocurrency, would that now be capital
so
gain?
It depends on how you hold the currency.
Okay.
If you hold it as a trading asset, then it's income, it's your trading income. So, but if you hold it as a capital asset, that's investment. If you make a gain, you pay capital gains. If you make a loss, then it's loss for capital gains. But if it's trading income, it's taxable as well as normal income and not as a gain or such.
Okay. Wow. I don't know anyone who is into crypto who knows that depth of knowledge that you just shared there. But is there any advice you can give the government on cryptocurrency taxation, cryptocurrency?
Yes. So because the general trend is that governments around the world have started to recognize the use of cryptocurrencies, they are not denying that fact. It would be nice if the government came forward to say, this is our stand on it, these are the tax implications, because I understand and I know a lot of Nigerians trade in cryptocurrencies. Some make gains, some make losses. It would be nice for the government to come forward to set the record straight so people know the implications of what they are doing. Right? You mentioned earlier that a lot of people don't know certain things about tax laws, and it's because really there's no information coming out from the relevant resources or agencies. So it would be nice for them to sort of put word out there and let people know the implications of what they're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
And the government will be losing revenue
by
not subjecting
that
tax. Yeah, so it's what constitutes.
I'm just looking at the whole window of how you can trace it. Tell me when the FIRS technical people and you guys, when you trace it, how can you even trace it? Like how? Because I don't know.
So for my understanding of cryptocurrency, there's actually a public register online where you see trading activities going on. Persons trading might remain anonymous, but I'm sure FRS can have, if they want to access those public registries to find out what's going on there.
All right, so we don't travel too much into crypto. Do we have any Instagram or Facebook questions yet? Okay, one of them. Okay, should we take that? Yeah, let's take it.
All right, there's a question from the Orishirishi shop.
Okay, that's an SME.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they're saying, what is VAID all about?
Okay, I think we answered that.
We answered that earlier, so maybe we can just when we put the
the thing on. Yeah.
yeah.
So probably person came up late, but I mean voluntary assets and income declaration scheme. Just if you've been defaulting on your taxes, I'm guessing you're an SME. Yes, I know. Sure. You've been defaulting on your taxes for
past 6 years.
6 years.
You have an opportunity to come forward, disclose previously undisclosed income and assets you've acquired in the past 6 years, and pay the right amount of taxes. If you do that before March 31st, you get certain benefits. You will not be subject to comprehensive audits. There will be waivers of penalties and interests. Or there's a twist behind penalties and interest. There's a view to the extent that you don't disclose before December 31st, then you are you are exempt from both penalties and interest. But after December 31st, you pay interest, but you are still free of penalty. So there's that view as well. And yeah, so
Okay, all right, thanks so much. Then, so coming back home to the VAIDS form, and some people are thinking of confidentiality. How firstly, still have trust deficits with the government, but now to the point of, are you sure my details will be confidentially treated, or would you guys pin me and start looking out for me as time goes by?
So that's a real concern we've heard from taxpayers, that would their information be kept secret. Now, the tax authorities have a duty under the law to keep every taxpayer information secret. And there are penalties if they fail to do so. There are fines, there are even custodial sentences. They can go to jail if they disclose. In my engagement with the government, they've said, okay, they will make sure taxpayer information is confidential. However, the confidentiality is limited as well. Where there's suspicion of a crime, or when Nigeria has entered into agreements with foreign countries for exchange of information, that can be, the information can be exchanged under those circumstances.
Okay, and that actually brings me to that. So the automatic exchange of information for tax purposes, can you shed light on that?
So
that's different from unexplained wealth.
Yes, totally different.
Okay.
Totally different. So generally around the world, there's the notion that different governments do not get the full tax picture of different businesses. So look at Nigeria, for example. FRS sees one business within the Nigerian context and cannot see outside Nigeria because they don't operate outside Nigeria. So the essence is for tax authorities to collaborate such that they have full picture of information of taxpayers operating globally. So for SMEs, to the extent that they have cross-border transactions, to the extent that they have related parties offshore with which they have transactions, or e-commerce, I mean, then it's possible that the information is lying somewhere with the tax authority who can exchange with Nigeria.
All right, interesting. And we have two questions. Okay, and we have two quick case studies that will run out here. So this is a person. I think we've touched on this, but let's see. Because I live in Nigeria, but my business is registered through Stripe Atlas in the United States. I already pay US taxes for my company and my income. Am I meant to pay Nigerian taxes again, and why?
So for a company that's resident and registered in the US, then the US has taxing rights, full taxing rights to the extent that the company does not have activities in Nigeria. Yes. For the individual, you are subject to tax in Nigeria. However, if the income earned offshore is brought into Nigeria through government-approved channels, then the income will be exempt from taxes.
Okay.
If brought into Nigeria through government-approved channels.
Okay. So for the same company, if that company was actually operating in Nigeria, so registered outside, would this still apply?
Yes, to the extent that you generate income from a Nigerian activity. Yes, Nigerian government has the right to tax that portion that is attributable to Nigerian activities. Yes.
Well, okay. All right. This is bringing some memories to me. So now I'm trying to push on this case study, right? He has or she has 100% of the business is actually here. So income, revenue, everything is made from there, right? And it's registered in the US, but you still pay the taxes there. So would that not amount to double taxation?
That's a real risk.
Yeah.
So usually Nigeria doesn't have a double tax treaty with the US. So there's that risk of double taxation. So when Nigeria has a double taxation with a certain country, there's either a relief or credit given for taxes suffered in one jurisdiction. Yes, so it doesn't amount to double taxation. In this instance, there's a real risk that she's subject to tax in Nigeria, because if you look at the Nigerian activities, if the income is being generated from here, then she has to account for something.
Because so many people, well, not many people, but a lot of startup guys have been at conferences where they've been advised to go through Stripe Atlas to get their business registered in the US. They need to know about what you just said. Okay, quickly, next case study. I'm a foreign citizen living outside Nigeria, but accruing income. I think we've answered this already. Okay, quickly, do we have any questions?
Moyene is saying, what is VAIDS?
Okay, we just we just answered that.
I wish we could respond to her and sort of say,
that's it. Okay, so you just get that done there. So it was great having you. But before we go, what would you like to advise the federal government in changing that, in moving from that 20 billion they are currently at to the 305 billion that they are looking at to get to?
A lot of things today. First being that government still has a lot of work to do to earn trust. Most people would say they are not keen to doing the right thing. Not that I'm supporting them, but the government needs to set that example, right? Doing the right things, there must be transparency and accountability. I mean, nothing stops government from, say, quarterly, saying, oh, we've made this much quarterly, and this is what we've put the money to use. I mean, we don't see that kind of trust. It would be nice to have that. Citizens as well are enjoying to pay their taxes. It's their civil duty and obligation. They need to do it. Yeah.
Especially that friend
of yours. Yeah.
Let's use a quote before the empire starts looking for me. Okay, so and it's that's for the government. Then to startups and SMEs. Now there's a people don't. The questions I've heard, because I work with a lot of startups, SMEs, is that they don't understand when does taxation actually start from them.
Okay.
So if you can just walk us through that.
So I will not give free advice here. So PwC usually has a tax academy for SMEs. And trust me, usually it'll cost you little to nothing to attend.
Okay.
I can arrange one with my guys in the office where we'll come and teach you all you need to know about taxation, relation to.
Okay, you can tell us cost implications.
I can get back to you. I can get back to you on that.
Okay, so thanks so much for Folajimi. He's part of the ministerial committee for the entire bit that we're actually talking about. So it was great hearing from you. We don't have any questions more, right? IG also. Well, good. Okay. All right. So thanks so much for Folajimi. So I'm Jide, and this is still TBCAVAIDSTOUR. Our next stop is going to be stop 7. At Lead Space Ojodo, also speaking with startups and SMEs about VAIDS. All right, so until then, TBCA.ng.